I'd like to call to order this committee whole meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores and extend a welcome to everyone in the chambers this evening. And the first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest. Can I remind every member of your responsibility to do so, and you can do so now or when it arises on the agenda. Nothing, then there's nothing under additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda. The next item on the agenda is delegations. This evening we have 4 delegations, and the first is Greg Smaltz. He's from STOP, and he's here about the Unifor wind turbine. Welcome, Greg.
I really need that? No, sorry. I'm here to talk about acoustic radiation, which obviously is the emissions from industrial wind turbines. I'd like to review some of the recent developments coming from our expert noise consultant report and from recent meetings with the local director of the Owen Sound Minister of the Environment Office, which is a result of your recent motion requesting Unifor, MOECC, STOP, and the town to meet and discuss apparent non-compliant noise test data that STOP received through its Freedom of Information search. On the first subject of reviewing some of our expert noise results to share with you, it'll be about turbine classification. The Novus Environmental Report provides evidence of why the Unifor turbine should have been classified as Class 3 at maximum 40 decibels, not Class 2 at maximum 45 decibels, nighttime limits. The relevant regulations, MPC 205 and 232, used at the time to define urban classes 1, 2, and rural class 3, state characteristics of rural class 3 as a rural area with an acoustic environment that is dominated by natural sounds, having little or no road traffic, such as a small community with less than 1,000 population, an agricultural area, a rural recreation area such as cottage or resort area, or wilderness area. Gobles Grove, where the turbine is located, is a small cottage resort beachfront community with signage indicating this some 50 meters from the turbine on County Road 25. It's primarily used as rural recreation and surrounded by agricultural land. Our nighttime noise levels were tested and are consistent with a rural area. Our acoustic environment is dominated by natural sounds, especially the ever-changing lapping of the waves on the beach. The Gobles Grove community does not have the predominant Class 2 characteristic of a daytime acoustic environment typical of a major population center where the background sound level is dominated by activities of people, usually road traffic, often referred to as urban hum. We do have the other half of the Class 2 characteristic of having low evening and night background sound level defined by the natural environment and infrequent human activity, starting as early as 7 p.m. and continuing to 7 a.m. Class 3 designation is a critical issue because all homes surrounding the turbine noise modeled or predicted at over 40 decibels by CAWs and our testing efforts. If Class 3 had correctly been assigned to the Gobles Grove community, the CAW turbine could never have been built. So we've been the victim of having the Class 2 characteristic of having a major population center acoustic environment dominated by urban hum applied incorrectly to our Gobles Grove resort community. Even the director of the Ministry of the Environment Owen Sound office, who would have to police the Class 2 maximum allowable daytime noise of 50 decibels, asked MOECC head office for specifics as to why it had been classified as such. When on visiting the site, he reports that there is a number of residential dwellings in close proximity to the turbine. He goes on to ask a second question, inquiring of the MOECC head office if they have an approved vendor list of audit test companies. What I did before the meeting started, I handed out the same attachments as were given to you folks with my presentation. But I put comments on each of those to hopefully help you understand a bit more about those. So if you can look at page 1220 and page 1219, and these are in sequence, It shows the Owen Sound office questioning why Class 3. It also shows them questioning about is there approved audits in place, approved audit test companies in place. It's a pretty important issue to come up later. Second page, continuation of Mr. Chappell asking why Class 2 with homes so close. The same with page 3. I don't want to go through these at length, but I think it's important that you understand some of the context surrounding these issues for further use and scrutiny of this subject, because it's an ongoing impact to our community. I think the more we all learn and know about it, the better we're all off. Mr. Chappell has given the boilerplate Class 2 answer from head office, which is copied to all senior MOCC approval persons. That's page 138. It also shows his audit knowledge. Previously, we've never determined the Gobles Grove population, going only so far as to saying there are approximately 100 homes inside the 550-meter zone near the turbine. I gave our CAO the attached map, it's your next entry there, which you have all seen before, which is the CW noise sensitive area map used for their turbine approval prior to us adding our own data to that same map. It shows the individual homes as black dots in the pink shaded area. I asked Larry to see if his staff could come up with a population of that noise sensitive area, which is essentially comprised of all residences within a kilometer of the turbine. The municipality has come back with a number of 583 persons, well below the 1,000 contained in the MOECC Class 3 factor list. Thanks to Larry and your staff for that information. So now we can check off the 1,000 population characteristic box supporting our Class 3 argument. I'd like then to go back to the next subject, which is the MOCC meeting, which you folks passed a motion on, asking for ourselves, MOECC, Unifor, and the town representatives to meet and discuss the apparent non-compliant noise evidence that we came up with from our 1,400-page Freedom of Information search. Ironically, a few days after attending this meeting, the Unifor declined to attend due to the fact they were under no written noise directives from MOECC. Steve Finch, who attended the meeting with our group, who's a long-term resident of Shipley Avenue, was up at his cottage with his grandchildren for family day. The wind was very strong out of the northwest for 2 days with the turbine running at 30 RPM, which is full power. That wind would place the Finch home upwind of the turbine, not downwind. The Halls family, which is downwind from the turbine, live on County Road 25. They both filed complaints that weekend. The message here is that harm comes from all sides of a turbine under full power. It's not just if you're downwind. Few residents see the merit in filing noise and health complaints. They feel it's futile. All attending the meeting got to see why. MOECC Owen Sound Director Rick Chappell says handheld noise tests done by his officers and CAW staff that would be 5 dB under the limit of 45 will be evidence he would need to issue a written order to do a noise-compliant audit test. When informed of the numerous one-hour average noise test results up to 14 dB over the 45 limit, he responded, "The high noise levels are due to natural background noise and don't justify my issuing a written request for an audit, so I'm leaving it voluntary. And if by June the tester needs more time to tick off some more boxes, I'll grant him an extension." As an aside, I was talking to the Enbridge people tonight, the Kincardine people. They are now almost 5 years to the week waiting for the same office in Owen Sound to give them the result of the audit test done 5 years ago. Ours starts in March, supposed to be finished by June, and that's what you're here to vote on tonight. I'm just here to tell you, the whole thing is a shell game fraught with disaster. All tests stop in mid-November due to the temperatures, so this could easily be consciously dragged on until the spring of 2017, 4 years after our turbine startup. Thus your discussion tonight. Despite our community being given a written commitment from the MOECC Director of Approval, these pages just sort of follow as you're going through your thing there. This is the Doris Dumais letter. that annual audit testing would be done in the first 2 years, and the fact that the same commitment is laid out in the CAW Clean Energy Noise Monitoring Plan. And I've included Ken Lewin's letter to our community, laying that out. Rick Chappell told us he refuses to make the audit test for compliance mandatory, as the boilerplate in the actual certificate of approval document doesn't call for it. What Mr. Chappell did not say at the meeting was that the Section D audit request would not be in the certificate of analysis issued at that time, but would be a progression from the results of the handheld tests showing non-compliance per the noise guidelines, all at his discretion. He also failed to mention that his boss, Heather Pollock, head of the Owen Sound office, asked MOECC head office, you see the attached evidence, to confirm what testing had to be done. And they confirmed scheduled annual audit testing over the first 2 years. She then emails to Mr. Chappell's subordinate, Robert Graham, the Unifor point person, and she copies Chappell. Graham in turn informs Dean Fowler by email, which is there in the file, that it's a requirement to do the audit test. So Unifor has been given a written directive by MOCC Owen Sound to audit test, making it mandatory, not voluntary. It just wasn't done by Rick Chappell. Something's really wrong with that program. Chappell professes not to have a working knowledge of the CAW's efforts on audit testing. The FOI says otherwise in great detail. You see your page 99 and page 116 following up there, just as some of the examples in that 1,500 pages. And I can just affirm to you, the Owen Sound office is lockstep in every bit of communication on audit testing from Doris to May through to today. Yet at that meeting, he professed not to have a good knowledge of that subject. And I said, well, too bad for you, I do. When shown the CAW's own failed attempts on April 28th, 29th, and 30th, 2014, at this audit test, which showed the turbine at the maximum noise limit while operating at only 60 to 90% power, Chappell again said there wasn't enough indication of non-compliance to warrant written directives. Just so you understand that. This is not the handheld test. This is the full acoustician audit test, big equipment, full Met tower, to noise protocol. They fire it up, and at the closest residence, they get 45 dB, 10:30 at night. That's the maximum. And they're at 60 to 90% power. Shut the test down. It's never been done again since. That's the question we want asked of Doris to May. He professed a concern that Unifor may take him to an ERT hearing if he issued written directives, despite the fact the MOCC director backs him up and his boss backs him up. So you understand that. The director of approvals for the government of Ontario, she said do the test. His boss said do the test. He's worried he's going to get taken to a hearing. And he's in control of the situation. So he's not going to make it a written requirement that the test be done mandatory. So it's voluntary. What's a municipality and its residents to do when confronted with what looks like overt attempts to cover up non-compliance and thwart audit testing? Can you imagine if Bruce Power operated this way? Yet 568 people in our community are at risk with no safety compliance with this form of energy generation. Tonight, you, our council, are debating a motion to ask that the testing be done, if not completed by September. We appreciate that. Assuming passage, we would also like council to consider forwarding it, along with an accompanying letter to Doris DeMay, who made us the promise. The letter should express residents' and council's displeasure, I use that word mildly, at this failure to ensure compliance with the promised 2-year time frame, especially in light of MOECC considering this turbine high profile and contentious enough for the Assistant Deputy Minister to ask for its inclusion in the provincial update, and that's in your FOE file in front of you. An explanation of why the MOECC has failed in its duty to ensure compliance should be requested as well. On closing, I'd like to leave you with two thoughts. The affected residents who spent over $150,000 of their own money opposing this social injustice will be making their request to the MOEC shortly. Their intent is to share this with Council and seek your support. The second is for Council to consider how best to communicate with citizens the ongoing importance of continuing to file noise complaints. Without it, they say there's no problem. I want to thank you guys for your time and your continued efforts. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Greg. Just before you go, I don't know if there's any questions or comments from the committee. Just to comment from my perspective, I know you've put a great deal of effort into this, and I thank you for that. It brings us information that takes a lot of time, and I admire you for your perseverance, Greg.
Like I would just say, Mike, that it's not solely a situation that affects us in Saugeen Shores either, and you guys understand that it's a provincial policy, and but the issues are all the same.
I agree with you.
They're the same worldwide, but not doing anything is just, in my opinion, just not an option. So again, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Greg. The next deputation is John Mann, and he's here about a proposed DGR. Welcome, John Mann.
I wonder, before we start, Mayor, if that clock could be turned off. It's very distracting. I promise I'll stay within the
10 minutes, if you will, then that's fine.
I promise.
I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be strict with the 10 minutes, John, but I think we've heard this many. You know where we're on this position.
You have, Your Honor, you have.
So give us some leeway.
Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I'm requesting tonight that Council of Saugeen Shores vote no on today's proposed resolution purporting to support the OPG DGR. First, the Council resolution directly contradicts the following testimony of Mayor Mike Smith on behalf of Saugeen Shores at the Joint Review Panel OPG DGR public hearings. I'm quoting the Joint Review Panel member Archibald, who posed this question to Mayor Smith at the hearings. Quote, as a usual follow-up, as we've been asking all of your colleagues, you had mentioned that you, the Council, had developed a very good understanding of OPG operations through the consultation process. The standard question is, has this understanding and level of approval by the community ever been tested by polling? Mayor Smith's response to that was, not by the Council of Saugeen Shores. End quote. In light of this testimony, the resolution cannot be approved. By contradicting Mayor Smith's testimony to the JRP and in light of the overwhelming opposition to the OPG DGR by citizens of Saugeen Shores on the JRP public record, the resolution would make the evidence presented by Saugeen Shores to the JRP not credible, not reliable, and not trustworthy in the OPG DGR minister's review process. The review of the same JRP public record is presently stated in my federal court application for judicial review. Second, on February 22nd, 2016, Saugeen Shores Councilor Dave Myatt wrote the following letter to the editor of Saugeen Times, pro-OPG DGR newspaper, soliciting support for his motion to support the DGR. I quote his letter, Dear Editor, your editorial is well written and exposes the flaws that are so prevalent in the arguments put forth by those that oppose the DGR for LAILW, the low and intermediate level waste DGR. On February 29th, Saugeen Shores Council will be debating a motion, moved by Councillor Myatt, end bracket, to indicate our support for the DGR next steps on behalf of what I believe are the majority of Saugeen Shores residents. If readers of your editorial agree with me, then I would very much like to hear from them, since I've been hearing plenty from those who do not. A short note indicating that you agree with the science and the expert recommendations in the JRP report is all that's required. Signed, Dave Myatt, Councillor Saugeen Shores, with his email address. That's the end of the letter. Mr. Myatt's letter confirms that he has no evidence whatsoever that supports his, quote, personal belief, end quote, that a majority of citizens in Saugeen Shores support the OPG DGR findings by the JRP. His letter confirms that his motion was also not prompted by citizen concerns or citizen initiative. This motion was raised solely by council and not in response to a majority of citizens requesting it to be brought forward. In fact, The letter solicits only letters of support, not opposition. In addition, Council has assured itself through its own legislative bylaw that citizens that oppose the DGR can only speak to Council for 10 minutes, one time every 6 months. This is not how our democracy works. Next, a few supportive letters received because of this solicitation in a pro-DGR newspaper does not establish an evidentiary foundation to confirm that there is, quote, majority, end quote, support by Saugeen Shores citizens. Next, the JRP public record confirms the 7 years of unlawful secret closed DGR meetings conducted by Bruce County Council with OPG, NWMO, and CNSC from 2005 through 2012, when the DGR process was totally biased, secret, and not transparent in any way. Yet Council's motion incorrectly states that it was, quote, a process that has been unbiased, thoroughly transparent, inclusive, and accommodating to every interest, end quote. Citizens were intentionally and meaningfully left out of the most important 7 years of the DGR process. Next, the DGR public record requires a, quote, compelling willing community, end quote. In other words, at least 75% citizen support. A mere majority will not suffice. As a result, Saugeen Shores Council cannot support the OPG DGR because, according to its own proposed resolution, Council only, quote, believes that the majority of its citizens support findings of the JRP, end quote. Council, therefore, quote, believes, end quote, there is, quote, majority, end quote, support from its 12,000 citizens. Therefore, and that's without any evidentiary support whatsoever. Therefore, according to the resolution, the citizen support in Saugeen Shores does not rise to the required compelling willing community level required. Last, furthermore, the overwhelming opposition to the DGR by citizens of Saugeen Shores proves that Saugeen Shores is not a, quote, compelling willing community, end quote. Vote no on that resolution, please. I also rely on my other submissions that I've made. And I thank Linda White for helping me on this. She's going to play the video that I've attached to my delegation, which was produced by Great Lakes, Stop the Great Lakes Nuclear Waste Dump. Fabulous video that, in my opinion, says it all and requires a no vote by every councilor here tonight. Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Linda. And the minister isn't going to make her decision by tomorrow. She's adjourned it, awaiting further studies, as you know. And so she doesn't agree with the JRP findings. And so I don't know how this council can go forward and agree with it. But that's a spectacular video. I think it says it all. And I'm asking this council to say no to the resolution. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Questions for Mr. Mann? If not, then our next, Councillor Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thanks, John, for your presentation. Just a point of clarification and also a question. The letter you quoted me as writing to the paper is true. I wrote that letter, but I also wrote another letter to the editor, which was published in the Saugeen Times just this past week, February the 25th. And in there, I also invite people to give me feedback, thoughts, and what I say in there is there will be an opportunity for any member of the public to address council members with their thoughts immediately prior to the meeting at 7:10. I would encourage as many people as possible to come and participate, regardless of how they feel about the proposed motion. Alternatively, I would appreciate hearing how people feel about the motion with a short email. So I have invited both sides, and I'll tell you.
Thank you for that
I
clarification.
did get feedback from both sides of the argument.
Thank you. I didn't see that letter.
Okay.
I seldom look at this stuff. My bride, Judy Ashby, alerted me to the one. I don't know how to work the darn thing. I never look at it.
All right, that's fair enough. And just the last part of your deposition, you said. Furthermore, the overwhelming opposition to the DGR by citizens of Saugeen Shores proves that the Saugeen Shores is not a compelling, willing community.
Yes.
And throughout that, you've made the assertion that we haven't got evidence to indicate that the majority of Saugeen Shores residents are in favor. We haven't done the scientific polling things. Yet, you seem to have evidence that an overwhelming opposition,
yes.
Overwhelming meaning
absolutely
more than 50% of
absolutely.
Saugeen Shores. Do you have a backing for that?
Yes, my delegation to this council, and along with 4 other delegations here, I personally reviewed the DGR file here. I spent 2 days reviewing it here. 1,000 pages of that file opposed the DGR. 15 earned support. And that was before the vote by this council to proceed with the being a candidate for the spent fuel DGR.
Right.
That is part of a delegation that you can look up. It's part of the delegation and part of the Saugeen Shores file. So we had 5 delegations that night, and I'd reviewed the file. 1,000 pages were opposed, 15 in support, only 15 in supporting, and the council unanimously, without comment or debate, approved going ahead with being considered for the spent fuel DGR.
All right. So you,
and the other evidence I have is the Joint Review Panel itself. I mean, countless Saugeen Shores residents have filed the record, and I'm in the federal court with the record. The record's this thick. Countless Saugeen Shores people submitted submissions to the Joint Review Panel, and many Saugeen Shores residents attended those Joint Review Panel meetings, hearings, of which I did as well. I attended every day, and they presented submissions orally and through questions to the Joint Review Panel. So it's been an ongoing, and this is after 7 years of unlawful closed meetings, secret closed meetings that we knew nothing about. Had we known about it, we would have been saying, why are you doing these 2 DGRs when only 1 DGR is necessary for all of it?
Oh, I understand the basis for that part of your argument.
Well, why isn't it stopped then?
But
because
to
it's
to
a simple.
paraphrase, then your phrase overwhelming then is based upon the volume of opposition that you saw
Absolutely.
at the hearings.
Well, and in Saugeen Shore's own file, 1,000 pages were opposing.
Not based on any kind of polling or.
Well, I did a lot more polling than this council ever did, and the actual testimony of the mayor is, we have no idea. We didn't do any polling. And here you're here saying, oh, we believe the majority want it, but you've got all kinds of. It's an awesome, massive amount of people against it in Saugeen Shores itself.
Countless, apparently.
Countless.
Yeah.
Countless.
How many that is, but
I think we've reached the point here, Councillor Mine. I think we've reached the point, Mr. Mann. We have two more delegations, and I want to make sure that they get an opportunity to speak.
And a final point, Flint. We now have Flint. That is the real game changer in all this.
nuclear accident?
I think we've had. Thanks, Mr. Mann.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next deputation is Charles Hazel. He's here as a member of SOS and is on the proposed DGR.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, members of council, public, and the press. I would like to. I'm going to be using a PowerPoint presentation, so I haven't rehearsed it, and there may be some interfaces that are a little less seamless than I would like, but let's take a run at it. I'm speaking as a citizen of Saugeen Shores. I'm a member of the board of SOS. Just see what we got here. That's an image, of course, of our wonderful geography, very wet and spectacular. Member of Saugeen Shores, Save Our Saugeen Shores. And my concern is over the factual accuracy and wording and timing of this motion. The intent is through careful reading and my remarks that you will be moved to that the motion be retracted, or failing this, that you will vote no. The motion ends with the following resolution: that the duly elected council of the municipality of Saugeen Shores believes that the majority of its citizens support the findings of the JRP and therefore lends unequivocal support to the proposed deep geological repository, and strongly encourages the Federal Minister of the Environment and Climate Change to approve the project to advance to the next stages of development. And three questions: on what basis do you believe, accept as true, that the majority of citizens living in Saugeen Shores unequivocally support the findings of the JRP? What is the purpose of giving unqualified support on behalf of the people of Saugeen Shores when the JRP itself saw fit to include 98 conditions and recommendations? And the Minister has determined that the report is not sufficient and has opened up the process. And then on February the 18th, what does the strongly encouraging the Minister to approve the project mean when on February the 18th, 2016, the Minister of the Environment made an extraordinary decision to order the OPG to produce new information studies and a revised schedule? It's presumptuous and premature to be pledging unequivocal support at this time. Motions are only as good as the four whereas clauses that the mover and the seconder presumably think are the reasons why the motion is a good idea. So let's take a look at the first one and the other three. Trust and confidence. Our experience. Sorry, I'm just going to catch up with this here. Thank you. Our experience of OPG in this community extends back 50 years. It's a remarkable history of responsible management of the nuclear power stations, decommissioning, and surface storage of waste materials from that facility. OPG has earned our respect. And there are two images, one from 1970, as it was called then, the Douglas Point under Ontario Hydro, and then, of course, Bruce Power as it is more or less now. The Deep Geological Repository for Low and Intermediate Level Waste is a new and quite different project. The OPG DGR project is unlike other OPG projects. It's about mining, storage, and abandonment of nuclear waste 680 meters below grade. It is separately funded, and the OPG DGR team exists for the singular purpose of obtaining a license to construct a DGR in Kincardine. And that's the OPG team in front of the panel at the recent hearings. Trust and confidence working with OPG does not automatically translate to trust and confidence working with the OPG DGR team, or that have yet to demonstrate that their proposed and untested project for burial of nuclear waste in our community is safe, well-sited, or for long or has long or short or long-term benefits to the community or the environment. OPG DGR1 team has unique and independent status. Saugeen Shores has little direct experience with the OPG DGR team, other than the high-level coordination meetings which took place after the past 10 years. There's been reference to them as inasmuch as they were illegal and undermined trust. They have not yet earned our confidence and trust. So there's a distinction there that I think is important. The other item has to do with rigorous scientific and significant scientifically based investigation, costing taxpayer millions, unbiased, thoroughly transparent, inclusive. You know the rest of the text. The question is not that the money was spent, but does it give you the quality of work that gives you the basis for sound decision-making? The fact is that the JRP report, Joint Review Panel report, was qualified by the 98 conditions. Many have significant environmental effects. The public and international reaction has been negative, and the Minister is not convinced, which leads us to where we are right now. The OPG DGR1 Environmental Assessment Report is naturally biased, and it reflects the best interests of the organization that is behind it and its mandate. That would be expected of any business venture, which this certainly is. Preparing an environmental assessment, and OPG DGR1 is no different. For the motion to claim that they are unbiased is misleading, characterizing the Joint Review Panel as steadfast, meaning single-minded and unwavering endorsement. They're not supposed to be carrying that into their decision-making, but balanced opinions suggests bias on their part and is misleading as well. The fact is that OPG DGR1 Environmental Assessment Report fell short of the mark and did not inspire the level of confidence and trust that's expected at this stage in the process in order to justify approval, or for that matter, rejection. Claiming it is transparent, inclusive, and accommodating when the jury is out and the safety case as science is under question is misleading again. The third, whereas councillors have read the report and are satisfied that the scientific process was sound. The statement hinges on the assumption of the scientific process, that it was used as a basis for findings, and this being the case, that the recommendation to proceed is sound, comprehensive, and thorough. The term is not correct. It is actually what they did was, and you'd find this in all the literature, scientific verification, not a scientific process. The term, I might as well skip to the images here. Thank you. The scientific process, it should be familiar to everyone, I'm sure it is used in error in this case and misleads council into believing that the Joint Review Panel recommendation occurs on the basis of that higher level of standard that was actually conducted. And you're aware of the scientific process, of course. The key one is step 3, conduct an experiment. The scientific process is fundamental to how we will determine the design and construction of a DGR in any given geography and location on the planet. Understanding how to do this this is done is complicated because of the very long time frames and working with the geological formations, which are extremely complex and ultimately impossible to predict. Demonstrating the viability of a DGR requires a scientific process to be used to the fullest. DGR concepts require necessary step of conducting controlled experiments, like anything, to determine whether the design concept is correct and construction is feasible. For DGRs, these experiments can only take place in an underground research laboratory, which is what you see on your screen right now. All countries involved with DGR development conduct URLs, underground research laboratories. URLs are the international standard for expectation for any country attempting to demonstrate the safety case of a DGR and ultimately gaining public acceptance. It's critical. The risks, difficulty, and costs associated with long-term nuclear waste storage are enormous. URLs are the way you demonstrate that. The proximity of the proposed DGR to human populations, agricultural industries, natural resources, and Bruce Power, supplying 20% of the Ontario electricity, require nothing less than the highest standard of scientific process. So how did we do? How did we do? As for the OPG DGR1 project and how it measures up to the scientific process, well, it doesn't, because OPG decided to skip that step of the URL researching and testing stage. In doing this, it distinguished itself unique amongst international communities. In green are the URLs. And not one of them has missed that step. For Kincardine, it's unique in that it wants to proceed. It's been proposed as being a testing ground for a facility that has no testing whatsoever. The effect of not constructing a URL research to confirm assumptions and technical solutions has the effect of offloading risks into construction, which is exactly what went down during the hearings. Now, and this approach is unprecedented and has significant financial, human, and environmental consequences. There you see that diagram, which obviously explains the gap in the process. It is an error of judgment that presents to present Kincardine's determination of majority opinion as a factual basis for URLs. That's all right. Thank you. Sorry for the. The last point, of course, is the idea of majority support for Kincardine. It has to do with that this clearly understood the voices of the host municipality and majority of the community should be given paramount consideration on this matter. The idea of majority support in Kincardine goes back to the results of a phone poll, and you've heard a little bit about it, that was conducted in 2004. It was a substitute for a referendum. The contract went to the lowest bidder. The poll represented a fraction of the total population, didn't mention a DGR, and it was conducted in winter. It is an error in judgment, again, to present Kincardine's determination of majority opinion 12 years later as a factual basis for the Saugeen Shores opinion now. Saugeen Shores is a unique, geologically unique as well, community is a unique community with point of view, and this fact was underscored in January 2014 when the NWMO disqualified Saugeen Shores as a suitable host because of its geology, because its population was too large, and the registered level of concern by the community was divided. DGRs remain a divisive issue here and throughout the province and internationally. Our concerns are site-specific, not generic. Saugeen Shores must preserve its ability to enact bylaws that are in the best interest of the citizens and businesses in the municipality, and this motion puts at risk those necessary steps because of unequivocal support. And if you want to think of others, don't stop at Kincardine. Think of the 184 cities that made resolutions against the DGR in behalf of their citizens. Think of the 40 million people who drink the water and countless generations who of others who, like us, deserve better. There is no longer one interpretation leading to one conclusion. 10 years of study and unlimited funds have led us elsewhere, and we are wise to proceed with caution. What was once certainty is now uncertainty. We need to start thinking about how to strengthen our hand at this time, not weaken it. We need to show leadership here in our community and as an example to others. The resolution that has been drawn up and presented to you is deeply flawed and misleading. With respect and under the circumstances I have outlined, I suggest that it is withdrawn or you vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hazel. Any questions or comments for Mr. Hazel? Thank you, Mr. Hazel. The next deputation is Glenn Sutton, and he's here about a proposed DGR. Welcome, Mr. Sutton.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor Smith and members of Saugeen Shores Council. My name is Glenn Sutton from Kincardine. I was in this council chamber approximately 12 years ago when I was mayor of Kincardine to explain in detail the proposed LLW-ILW DGR in the municipality of Kincardine. I'll now go into my prepared statement, and I'd like to thank your staff for their professional help in preparing with my material. First, as my disclosure statement, as a former councillor and mayor for both the former town of Kincardine and the new municipality of Kincardine for a period of 18 years, now current resident of the township of Huron-Kinloss, I'm here tonight to address and clarify a few of the misconceptions related to the OPG DGR proposal. Also, I'm a retired nuclear engineer and a member of both the PEO, Professional Engineers of Ontario, and the PMI, or Project Management Institute, with my PMP, Project Management Institute designation. My purpose is simply this, to address and clarify a few of the misconceptions and identify 10 of them related to the proposal. I'll skip my agenda and I'll go right directly into it. Number one, the top 10 misconceptions of the OPG LLW ILW DGR. Number one, no one consulted us. Not true, it's blatantly false. A community consultation center was opened on the main street, Queen Street of Kincardine, and staffed at all times by both a municipal member of council and an OPG representative to welcome people in and answer questions. Displays were also located there. A variety of methods were used to welcome people in and answer questions, to communicate with the public, such as newsletters, presentations, advertisements in the paper, etc. The public dialogue was then followed by a community consultation. A separate report to council was made along with an independent review of the results, third-party verification. The results were positive, and thus the municipality of Kincardine became a willing host community by passage of Bylaw 2004-157 on October the 13th, 2004. Number two, every DGR in the world has failed. This is not true. Representatives of our council visited several sites in Europe and the United States to determine the best technology available out there. An underground DGR is a universal standard. Also, the European Union, which speaks for a large number of countries, has adopted the DGR as their standard model. Even when Generation 3 and 4 reactors are brought online, that produces less nuclear waste than current models of reactor. However, when nuclear fuel processing should be used in the future, there will still be always a need for DGRs, hopefully a much smaller volume. Number three, low and intermediate level waste, nuclear waste, will be dumped on the shoreline of the Great Lakes. A very poor choice of words. These types of statements are very misleading. The Western Waste Management Facility has safely stored this waste for many decades now. The actual location of the proposed DGR is below the water table and at a very deep level that ensures safety by several orders of magnitude, 10 to the minus 12 to the 10 to the minus 14th, over the two other options considered. Number four, amazingly, Flint, Michigan public water supply issue. I can assure you the Flint, Michigan public water supply issue situation has absolutely nothing to do with the subject at hand. In fact, referring to it is just a red herring to distract people's attention and promote fear-mongering. I call to attention to your attention information I've gathered here. Direct quote: after Flint changed its water source from treated Detroit Water and Sewage Department water to the Flint River, to which Flint officials had failed to apply corrosion control chemical treatment, then its drinking water had a series of problems that culminated with lead contamination, creating a very serious public health danger. The corrosive Flint water caused lead from aging pipes to leach into the water supply, causing extremely elevated levels of lead, and it led to sickness in children and so on. Anyway, the root cause of the whole situation was municipal officials were short of money. You're all familiar with this on both sides of the border. They tried to save money by switching from water supply A to B, but they used the wrong chemicals in B, which caused corrosion of lead pipes. Going back to water supply A, the original problem was that the water treatment chemicals were very effective, but they were too expensive, so they switched water supplies to save money. Bad mistake. Going back to my presentation, Number 5, the rock used in the DGR is not appropriate. Around the world, several geological media have been used and considered for disposal of nuclear waste, including clay, shale, tuff, which is volcanic ash, basalt, which is volcanic rock, salt, and hard rock. The DGR will be located at 660 meters below ground surface and low permeability limestone, 10 to the minus 16th per inch, with overlying low permeability shale. And I have to point out verbally that several boreholes have been drilled a few years ago at the Bruce site. The rock has been removed. It's been shipped to independent geological labs for analysis. It's appropriate, and it's also been independently verified by 3 geological engineering professors across the world. Number 6, is the DGR safe? Yes, the independent assessment study prepared at the start of the study period was accepted by Kincardine Council. They accepted the concept of a DGR over continued above-ground storage, i.e. the status quo, and enhanced above-ground storage. Number 7, are housing prices protected? Yes. Bylaw number 2004-157 was passed on October 13, 2004. This bylaw is called Property Protection Value Protection Plan, or PVPP. Property owners will be provided with compensation as per terms of the plan for any economic losses to their home. Number 8, what about our American friends? Several politicians in Michigan have concerns about this DGR. All of us should be concerned. I must be concerned about the safety of the water from our Great Lakes. It's our drinking water supply. It's absolutely essential that long-term storage of low and intermediate level waste in this DGR proceeds. It offers by far the greatest level of protection to the Great Lakes than any other alternatives. Number 9, what about climate change? Once the low-level waste is safely stored underground in this DGR, the low-level waste is protected from reglaciation when it occurs in the future. The DGR offers the best level of protection in the future if glaciation, if the glaciers ever come south with it below ground, it's not going to be scraped away, it will be protected. Number 10, and perhaps most importantly, is it moral and ethical to build this DGR? I think the answer is yes. Otherwise, it wouldn't support it. In my opinion, we need to discuss, quote, energy ethics, end of quote, and promote a fuller understanding between philosophers and theologians on the one hand and engineers and scientists on the other. I'm just going to skip over going to the PowerPoint for a second to finish this presentation. I want to talk about limestone rock, the physical and chemical characteristics. Limestone is present in abundance below the site of the DGR. It's composed mostly of the minerals calcite and agarite, or calcium carbonate. It's a sedimentary rock, compressed over hundreds of thousands of years as a sedimentary material to be very hard. And I want to bring this book to your attention. It's called The Chemistry of Nuclear Fuel Waste Disposal by Donald R. Wiles. It applies to level waste. He's an esteemed retired professor of chemistry at Carleton University. The main chemical property that makes it extremely suitable for use in the DGR is its very low permeability. The other main physical property of tight, quote, tight Ordovician limestone, end of quote, is it is extremely dry and is used elsewhere in the world, for example, in the United States of America, for underground storage of important documents and records in Hollywood films because it's so dry down there, because water can't get in there, including warehousing office, movie archiving, electronic record storage, etc. So a summary of your proposed Saugeen Shores motion of support for the level waste DGR, I respectfully request that Saugeen Shores Council support the motion tonight for the continued support of the DGR. And please remember the friendly item and the silent majority. We'll go through the PowerPoint quickly. I submitted 3 PowerPoints. The first PowerPoint was made 2002 when I went on that one half of council to Sweden, France, and so on. And the 2003 PowerPoint was the visit to 2 locations in the States. This one summarizes them all. So if we can move, is this little thing here? Is that it, Linda? That works. Good. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to skip over the stuff that's sort of the summary of Kincardine, our population, largest town and so on, or industries. That's some downtown heritage of Kincardine. Here's how it started out. We went into a shutdown of Bruce A in 1997 when the provincial government closed Pickering and Bruce A. The privatization of BNPD started in 2001. The BEC Nuclear Steam Initiative was terminated. Environmental assessments for reconditioning a new build started in Ontario by OPG and Bruce Power for both stations. The Douglas Point reactor was decommissioned for about 15 years. The Bill C-227 announced with the existing sites named as potential repositories, but low-level and intermediate-level waste was not addressed in the legislation. It was exempt or not included. That's a key point. All of Ontario's L and ILW waste from operations is centralized storage at WWMF, the Western Waste Management Facility, plus or minus 40% of the high-level waste in above-ground concrete containers. Bill C-27 said it creates the NWMO looking for three options: must demonstrate an informally host community, DGR somewhere in the Canadian Shield, or prolonged reactor site storage, or centralized storage either above or below ground. In reactor site communities, this is high-level waste are part of the legislation from inception to joint to point in inception, and so on. Issues. This is a lot of information. 40 years of activity without LL or ILW waste being sorted out. Within 15 years, Canada must bring in 15,000 megawatts of new generating capacity to replace retiring reactors. New bill unlikely unless waste challenges properly addressed, and decommissioning existing nuclear stations generates about 100,000 cubic meters of ILW waste. What have we learned? A permanent home elsewhere will be found for waste. Port Hope had Bill C-27. It seemed to indicate this is not possible politically. Research also indicated that it's not possible unless some other jurisdiction is going to be forced to accept the waste. No one will be forced to accept high-level nuclear waste. Sierra Club's on record with a statement that they'll have the environmental battle of the millennium. We recognize that temporary storage is not forever. So, council discussions, we debated the correct path. Some were in favor, some weren't. We got a policy direction. We can have safe, permanent storage of nuclear waste, low level, and assured economic and cultural development, or neither. After much deliberation, negotiation chosen as the most responsible starting position. There's a picture of the council chambers, lots of communications. We approached OPG. We recognized that storage temporary was not an option. Preliminary discussions, it wasn't addressed in the Fuel Waste Act, I mentioned that before. Recognition that here's a key point, recognition that the generation which has benefited from nuclear power should also be involved in resolving the issue of long-term nuclear waste management. Now this, I haven't got a mouse, but I went down and clicked here to view, that'll bring the document up. That was the original MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, April 16, 2002. We prepared a work plan after that. We reviewed the technical feasibility of it, do social economic impact assessments, review both European and American models, travel to those sites, and speak to the facility operators on the ground to see what was going on and what they recommended, and also community leaders, the mayors and the councillors. So there's a photograph. These are the two key photographs right now on the left. I was part of that delegation. 4 people from Kincardine Council. We're in France there, and behind us is a bridge going over to Germany. We went to Swilag, Switzerland. We looked at the Niagara project, and research from there demonstrated that sedimentary rocks, specifically limestone and similar other sedimentary rocks, were just as good, if not better, than granite rock in the Canadian Shield. Centre de l'Aube in France, and the SKB facility in Sweden. This is a picture of the other half of, I didn't go on this trip, they went to Barnesville in South Carolina and Carlsbad, New Mexico. So there's a picture of the ZLEG facility, top left. The bottom right is in France, surface concrete vaults. Now the most interesting picture, if you go, there's 3 reactors in Sweden. At the third picture on the right, at the front there, there's a Long Island isthmus comes out. At the end there, ships come in and they unload nuclear waste from other nuclear reactors. But that road about 2/3 of the way down there, that's when we went under the ground in a Volkswagen bus, 6 people, down into, it was under construction at the time, where we saw the construction of the, below the Baltic Sea, DGR. It was so successful in Sweden that now Finland has actually copied that design quite successfully. This is some of the area where they drilled into the rock in the Swiss mountains. Now, Barnes Well, our council was not impressed. It was just digging a hole in the ground and putting it down there. Not acceptable, surface concrete vaults. However, they were impressed with the WIP facility in the salt deposit in Carlsbad, New Mexico, deep rock vaults. Now, here's some site visit findings. I want to keep moving because time is of the essence.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to hurry.
Yep.
We're about 15 minutes, Glenn.
Good.
Please summarize.
DGR, so there's the actual motion that passed. There's a hosting agreement, and there's a bylaw that I signed, and it's a public document. And there's the opening of the Community Consultation Office, or local MP, MPP, and other mayors from around the area. There's the poll. There's an independent verification of the poll, and on. Motions to support other site. So that ends it. How do I turn this off? Like this? Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Glenn. Any questions or comments for Glenn? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Sutton. My first question is just a clarification of timing. When you were making your first point about consultation, the text of your presentation indicates that the consultation was done before the hosting agreement was signed. It's my understanding that the consultation was done in January and February of 2005, but the hosting agreement was signed a little over 3 months before that on October 13th, 2004.
I believe that went down. We passed first and second reading, but we held off third reading until after the poll was taking place. And if it was no, it would not be signed, and it was passed positive, so we passed that motion that night.
Okay, thank you.
That helps.
My second...
That's my understanding. It's a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
My second
Sure.
question then is about consultation and transparency, which is an
Yes.
issue for us
Sure.
tonight. As mayor in 2004, I'm sure you remember a report that was prepared for Kincardine by the Richard Ivey Business School of University of Western Ontario.
Yes.
It was a report that you referred to 3 times in your testimony before the JRP in 2013. And the report was prepared to advise the municipality about how to negotiate most effectively with OPG. So just a couple of points from the report, and then I have a question for you about consultation. The report indicated or recommended that Kincardine increase the level of urgency for the deal because OPG claims to have options and doesn't appear to be in any hurry to come to a negotiated deal for the low and intermediate level waste with Kincardine. The report also cautioned Kincardine about OPG's willingness to cancel contracts unilaterally based on their past experience. It criticized some aspects of the January 2004 Golder report on community acceptance as having misleading questions and sample sizes that may lead to skewed results. And it calculated that the financial difference over 30 years between a Kincardine without nuclear industry and one with both the BNPD and a DGR would be almost $700 million in the negative, partially because of the stigma associated with the DGR. So my question was, during the consultation, the extensive community consultation, was the public told about this? I remember that they were told in the preamble that there would be significant economic benefits. How were they informed of this report in your consultation?
Okay, good question. Thank you, Cheryl, for your question. Yes, there were 4 MBA students from University of Western Ontario. We had hired one of the professors and these students to sort of help us in our negotiations. Where the process was introduced was at the at that time OPG Information Center. Just we looked over the site there between the 2nd and 4th concession. And at that, actually, I was a council. I organized the Economic Development Committee. We had the press in there, and the students prepared sort of an overview of the report's findings. the benefits and so on, and that's how they were, I guess, met with the public at that time. And we just took, they would critique our negotiating skills, and we would just use their advice to move forward type of thing.
But this information was not shared in the actual preamble and the wording of the consultation poll?
It was shared with the public
2005.
initially. It wasn't specifically mentioned in the question. I don't even know if there's any need for it to be in the preamble to the question.
There wasn't. It's the only economic indication in the preamble was that there would be significant economic benefit.
Yes.
The issue about
we struggle with that wording because what is significant, we didn't want to overstate the case or understate the case, so we just used it would be a benefit, a very good benefit, and we left it at that.
Even though the report warned that it's possible $700 million in the negative because of partially the stigma of the DGR over a 30-year period.
We didn't agree with everything. We receive a lot of information and we accept what we can use. Other parts we might not agree with it, and in the case of the stigma, I have to assure you, I was asked that very same question when there's going to be a possible nuclear station in, I think it was in North Saskatchewan. There's 2 sites up there, and I got phone calls from CBC in Winnipeg. What about the stigma of nuclear power station? Just that general type of question. And I said, Bruce Power, for the former Ontario Hydro OPG, and Bruce Power has been here since 1967, I think it was, or 62 MPD, but 67 at Douglas Point. And you can't hardly buy a lot along Lake Huron, like almost from Tobermory right down to south of Kincardine or Goddard's. Lakefront property here is still very valued. And if you'd ask property owners along the lake, that they complain about why their taxes are so high due to the sunshine tax, because, the nice weather with beaches and that type of thing. So lakefront property and even property away from the lake is still very valued along this part of the country.
More question, if I may, quickly. You talk about the property value protection plan.
Yes.
And one of the requirements for getting that compensation is proof of causation. In other words, the homeowner or the property owner would have to prove that the perceived damage to their property would have been caused by the operation of the DGR. And so with the location of the BNPD so close to the DGR, how would homeowners be able to discern between possible damage coming from the DGR once it's in operation and BNPD?
A good question, thank you. Sometimes from concrete, depending on the thickness of the concrete, there is radiation coming off from the chemicals and so on in there. However, with regards to radiation, it's very easy to measure it. I know there was a delegation before about measuring noise. You can have an audiometer, and it's, the wind shifts and so on. But with radiation, it's sort of a constant field coming out. And as a nuclear worker, the detection, the instruments are available. And if a homeowner has any cause of worry or whatever, if something's in their basement, whatever, they can have the authorities check it out.
My question, though, is how are you going to distinguish between if the cause is coming from the BNPD or the operating DGR?
It would be, you would have to see what type of elements, radiochemical elements, are in a person's basement or whatever, wherever the contamination is. But in my opinion, I think there'd be a lot of other things you would probably detect before that even ever happened, and I don't think it will ever happen, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Due to the permeability of the limestone.
Thanks very much.
Any further questions for Mr. Sutton? If not, thanks very much, Glenn.
Thank you.
That's the end of our delegations. The next item on the agenda then is a general government staff report, and it has to do with our Heritage Registry Phase 2, and our clerk, Linda White, will present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The town's municipal heritage register currently consists of 12 designated buildings under the Ontario Heritage Act and 70 properties that are of cultural value or interest to the history of the town of Saugeen Shores. The Municipal Heritage Committee has been working on Phase 2 of the Heritage Register, and by undertaking extensive research has determined that 18 properties of local cultural heritage value or interest and should be added to the register. The owners of the 18 properties were notified in September 2014 of the committee's intent to add the properties to the register. An open house was held on June 2015, where many positive comments were received and questions and concerns were answered. In November 2015, property owners were notified that the Heritage Committee would be presenting their recommendations to the Committee of Whole and were given an opportunity to attend the meeting and/or express objection to being placed on the register. No objections were received. Being that no objections were received, the Municipal Heritage Committee is recommending that the attached list of properties be included on Phase 2 of the Municipal Heritage Register. Once on the register, the owner of a listed property must give the town at least 60 days written notice of their intention to demolish or remove a building or structure listed on the register. The purpose of the delay is to allow the Municipal Heritage Committee time to determine whether the recommendation to designate the building by bylaw should be made to Council. The listing of a property on the register is simply a way for Council to inventory its cultural heritage resources. Owners will not be required to maintain their properties to any higher standard than any other property owner in town. Once Council places a property on the Heritage Register, there is no appeal process. And the financial requirements to complete the register will be covered in the Municipal Heritage Committee budget.
Thank you, Linda. Then the recommendation is that Council considers passing a bylaw to authorize additions to the Municipal Heritage Register, in accordance with the Ontario Heritage Act. Any questions or comments? I'll start here, Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as an added heritage moment, I hope you all noticed the new coasters in front of you that says Heritage Works Here. Heritage does work here in Saugeen Shores, and this is one way of recognizing and celebrating the cultural resources in this community. The items on the list this time, Phase 1 was a lot of houses in Southampton in particular, but a few in Port Elgin as well. Phase 2, you'll notice a lot of them are along the River Road. Phase 3, which has already been thought about, will try and get at downtown areas, and it's too bad Mr. Duffy's owner isn't here, because his property would be one that we would at least initially consider. Each of these properties was researched by both volunteers and members of the committee. Some of the homeowners provided the committee with photographs and stories to go along with what we found through the archives with the assistance of archival staff. The open house that we had this time was at the Burgoyne Church. Was very well attended. It was fairly close to the River Road, so had a number of people come out. This is a very excellent way to recognize cool buildings in the community and very, very cool stories that go along with the buildings. So I hope you'll see fit to support the motion, and I would just invite any of you that are interested in heritage as we start Phase 3, you're welcome to indicate your interest and come out to the museum and help research properties. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Grace.
Yes, thank you. And I have just a couple of questions, and maybe Linda or Diane could answer. One of the points is about the fact that once the property is on the register, there's no appeals process. Can Council change its mind and take something off the registry? I'm assuming yes. Okay.
Correct.
I guess I just have kind of a problem with, I'm very supportive of a municipal heritage registry, but anytime there's something saying there's no appeals process, I have sort of a question about that, Diane. Maybe you could elaborate for me.
I think there's no formal appeal process, but I think really in reality, if you have a land, we've asked in the past that the Heritage Committee seek permission or inform people and seek their concurrence. Right. And I think in reality, the appeal process would be a phone call or a deputation to Council. I mean, we could never, there would never be. I'm sure we would entertain that and consider that on our decision.
Yeah. Okay. And my last question is about just the wording of the regulation talks about the fact that there's 60 days written notice of intent to demolish or remove a building. And I think the public and I would appreciate perhaps some clarification about any kinds of restrictions on renovation or putting siding on or painting. There's nothing, I'm assuming. Thank you.
Go ahead, Diane.
The comment that's there about the 60 days is directly from provincial legislation. And basically what it would mean is if a house or another structure that's on the building, if they came in to request a permit to demolish, there would at least be the chance to ask questions and to consider designation. Designation is not an easy thing to do, and it doesn't just happen, with no thought process. And there has to be significant elements. We have a number of designated properties in the community, and I would encourage you to take a look at that list and go see those houses and those structures. They're designated for a reason. There's lots of elements there that are still in fairly decent shape. Those homes have kinds of restrictions on them when things happen. These properties, it's really just to celebrate cultural resources in the community. And in comment to the appeal question, we have been asked at the Heritage Committee to actually consider taking a previously added property to the register off, and likely there'll be something come soon. And so there is no appeal process, but there's also a sense that these are real people. This is our community. So, there's a very good reason why somebody is looking for something, because chances are their property might have to be demolished just because of its aged. Anyway, so I hope that, but it's provincial legislation that is about the 60 days.
Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Linda, in your report you said that the 18 property owners were notified in September 2014. What method was used to contact the property owners?
They were notified with a written letter.
A written letter, okay, because at least one of them that's on the list appeared unaware that his property was on the list. So I'm not sure how that could come to pass.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
I would challenge that in the sense that letters were sent. Also, personal contact was made with almost everybody on that list. So somebody who doesn't feel that they were communicated with, I would be surprised about that and would encourage them to contact Tracy Edwards, because we spoke personally with most of the people on these lists, and they received at least 2 written letters mailed directly to their address.
Okay, because the one here tonight seems unaware. Just pointing that out.
Okay. Well, if he's here, he knows how he can get himself off that list if he wants, because we've had a pretty good discussion around that.
He or she, yes.
He or she, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. So, any further comments or questions? If not, all in favor of the recommendation. Opposed, if any. That is carried. So the next item on the agenda, again, is the General Government Staff Report, and it has to do with the 2016 non-union cost of living increase, and our Treasurer, Sue Dent, will present the report.
Sorry, we're turned down now. Thank you. To ensure that wages for non-union employees of the town remain competitive, historically this group of employees has been granted an annual compensation increase that takes into consideration several factors, including what has been awarded to union and police employees, the County of Bruce, and the annual CPI index. The relevant 2016 increases were summarized in the report along with the 2015 increases. Also, during the 2016 budget deliberations, Council indicated a desire to consider council wage increases separately from the rest of the non-union staff. As a result, we have proposed a separate recommendation in the recommendation section to allow Council to debate that separately. The lump sum payment to full-time non-union staff is proposed in recognition of the increases that were negotiated with both the IUOE and the Saugeen Shores Police Association for 2015. All of these proposed increases have been included in the 2016 budget.
Thank you, Sue. So the recommendation is that the non-union employees, Police Services Board, and Planning Advisory Committee be granted a wage increase of 2.25% effective January the 1st, 2016, and that all non-union full-time employees who were employed by the town at December the 31st, 2015 be granted a one-time lump sum payment equal to 0.5% of their 2015 annual salary, and that members of council be granted a wage of increase of 2.25% effective January the 1st, 2016, and that the authorizing bylaw be prepared for council's consideration. Comments, questions? Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I with regard to council's remuneration, I have some concern with council's remuneration being connected to, in the same way that all the others in this list are connected to negotiated settlements with our unions. For example, if you work the police association in here, Councillor Mayette and I directly negotiated that contract. I just have a bit of a philosophical concern about members of council negotiating these contracts and then our wages being calculated off of them. I think that it would be better if councils. I do believe council should have a wage increase. Saugeen Shores Council is among the lowest paid in the region, and so I think we need to continue to see incremental increases to council remuneration. But I don't like the way that formula is calculated. My own preference would be to see a CPI increase annually for council. It's out of our hands, and then and determined third party, and then that keeps us up with inflation. So my suggestion, and I suppose it can be a motion if necessary, Mr. Mayor, would be to amend this to have council's remuneration increased by the CPI.
I'll just comment to that in a general sense, because I've sat here many, many years and council has always struggled with this issue, and you can pick just about any method that you want to come by. They always have been reluctant to try and deal with it, and this is the way it's come because of some other council has kind of said, well, let's do it this way and instead of some other way, and you can pick any way you want, Luke. I absolutely agree with you. You can go out and do a market survey. We've done that on occasion, market survey with comparable municipalities and sizes. But I guess what I'm really trying to say is there's really no perfect way of doing it. No. So, Vice Deputy Mayor Heber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concern with the council aspect of this is that we don't have any requirements within the honorariums that we receive associated with our actual attendance at meetings. And I would suggest that it's time for us to take a look at how that all comes together. And I'll go back to previous terms of council. There were members who took rather long extended holidays, were gone for a couple meetings in a row. That didn't impact at all on their honorarium. There were members who occasionally took leaves from council to do other things, were gone for 6, 7, 8 weeks at a time, not attending meetings. Didn't have any impact on their allocation either. So I don't disagree with the way that this is in here, but I think that during this term we should take a look at how that is all structured, because certainly I've missed the odd meeting myself, but there's no opportunity to realize that not being here has a cost, and we haven't dealt with that, and I would suggest that should happen at some point in the near future. Thank you.
Any further comments? Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, just in response to the comments made by the Deputy Mayor, I see his point, and no one should be in a position where you're sitting on a bargaining committee negotiating a settlement that could or would have a direct impact on your own remuneration. And I can assure council and the public, for that matter, that at no time during that negotiation with the police did it ever occur to me that that's the way our remuneration would be geared or tied or leveled out. But I would say that I recall that last year at this time we took a significant reduction in the recommendation, and as you pointed out, our remuneration is probably the lowest in the area when you do the comparisons. And I'm not trying to make a case to say that we need to get a raise, but you don't want to get to a situation where remuneration gets to the point where you're not attracting the best people for the jobs either.
Any further comments? Councillor Rich.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. So where does that leave us? Does that mean we're going to have a debate about this at a future date? And so I would tend to agree with the Deputy Mayor that maybe we shouldn't be negotiating it, so maybe we should tie it to the CPI index. So how does that go about? Oh, did you make a motion? Oh, I'll second that motion.
So, okay, then so you did make a motion then?
I would move to amend the recommendation to set council's remuneration at the rate of CPI.
Okay. So I guess the question, I'll take that as an amendment. We'll deal with the amendment first, and I guess we could probably deal it all with one, but we'll deal with the amendment. All in favor of that amendment? Before I call the vote, then, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is that then that the cost of living, the COLA increase then would apply to all boards, committees, and remunerations, or just for the council remuneration? Okay, thank you.
Okay, ready for the question on the amendment? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. So we'll go back to the main motion as amended. All in favor of that? Or is any of... That's a good way. Okay, it's carried. Thank you. We'll move on. The next item on the agenda is Planning and Development Staff Report, and it has to do with Drinking Water Source Protection Plan revisions, and our Manager of Development Services, Bart Tovey, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After identifying concerns with the previous event-based policies from the 2015 Source Protection Plan that had been proposed by the Source Protection Region, a technical advisory committee was struck to reconsider how fuel handling and storage activities are potential risks to municipal drinking water systems that had surface water intakes. Town staff has been participating in the technical advisory committees. Further to the presentation from Carl Cedar at the February 8th, 2016 Committee of the Whole meeting, Town is requesting to endorse the proposed revisions to the Source Protection Plan as proposed in the report provided this evening. An active dialogue between the MOE and the Source Protection Region regarding process is still ongoing. However, staff is tabling the proposed response in support of the amendments. At this time, recognize that further consideration may be necessary. Once the MOE approves the revised policies, we understand that Town will be required by July 1st, 2016 to appoint a official to oversee the implementation of the policies in future. Staff will provide a report outlining the recommendations on implementation if MOE grants an approval to the amendment.
Thank you, Bert. And the recommendation is that Council considers the following. Pursuant to Section 34, Subsection 3 of the Clean Water Act 2006, the Town of Saugeen Shores endorses the proposed amendments to the Source Protection Plan of the Saugeen, Grey Sauble, North Bruce Peninsula Source Protection Region to address significant drinking water threats for fuel storage near Great Lakes intakes. Questions or comments? We'll start over here, Deputy Mayor Charbonneau. And we'll get to... Thank you. Anybody else over here?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I distributed for your information an outline drawn up by Saugeen Valley of the Clean Water amendment process under Section 34. The resolution we're considering this evening references Section 34.3 of the Clean Water Act. Section 34 is the relevant section of the Act that must be followed, in my view at least, to amend the Source Protection Plan, which has now been approved by the Minister. The outline before you, Step 1, amendment is drafted by the Source Water Protection staff in consultation with SBA, which is the Source Protection Authority, and SPC, the Source Protection Committee. That's been done. Step 2, Source Protection Committee approves the amendment. That's been done. Step 3, the Source Protection Authority approves the amendment. Hasn't been done. Source Protection Authority. Step 4, Source Protection Authority proposes the amendment. Not done. Source Protection Authority directs Source Water Protection staff to send a copy of the proposed plan amendment to the clerks of the affected municipalities. Here's where it gets tricky for the town of Saugeen Shores. Source Protection Authority, and it's very clear in the Act, Clean Water Act, Section 34.2, the Source Protection Authority will direct staff to send a copy of the proposed plan amendment to clerks. clerk of the town of Saugeen Shores received this amendment from the Source Protection Committee, which is a different agency altogether. It's very analogous if you think about it this way. If we, council, received a budget that was drafted by the chief of police, hypothetically, if the chief of police drafted a budget, the normal process, and he just sent it straight up to us and didn't ask for a resolution from the board, not approved by the board, what would council do? Council would send it back, because that would be not in compliance with the Police Services Act. And that's precisely what's happened here. The town of Saugeen Shores has received this amendment in a procedurally incorrect way, and we should not be considering it pursuant to Section 34.3, because Section 34.2, the steps therein have not been completed. The next step, municipal councils pass a resolution endorsing the amendment. I suppose that's what we're trying to think about doing tonight. Then the next step, Source Protection Authority directs Source Protection staff by resolution to publish proposed amendment and give notice to affected landowners. The step after, all municipalities who are affected pass their resolutions. The town of Saugeen Shores, we know for a fact that has already happened, that Source Protection staff have already forwarded the amendments to the public and to affected landowners before we passed our resolution, which is clearly required in Section 34.3 of the Act. The problem for us and for elected officials at the local end of this process is that the steps and the process that's been undertaken by the ministry is disenfranchising us. It's removed mandated steps in the process that empower Source Protection authorities, elected officials, locally elected officials, to have a strong role at the beginning of this process to propose the amendment, to forward it to clerks, and also it's disjointed the process so that the town of Saugeen Shores is now commenting after public circulation, which was not the intent of the Act. Now, we heard from MOECC here a couple of weeks ago, and I've heard from them many times before and since. And what do they tell me? They tell me that, oh, you don't need to read the Act in order. You don't need to read all the sections in order, or only step 1 is important and step 4 is important and the intervening steps aren't important. It doesn't matter to us. This Act, the Clean Water Act, is not a suggestion. It's the law, and it isn't just a random accumulation of sentences thrown at a piece of paper. It's distributed in order intentionally by the Legislature of Ontario. And the executive branch of the province is telling us we don't need to follow it. And that's deeply concerning to me. I will be talking about this to the Management Committee of the Source Protection Region in a couple of days, and also the Source Protection Authority. My suggestion to this council would be that we should defer passage of this resolution until we receive it in the manner prescribed in the Act, i.e. from the Source Protection Authority. Once a letter comes from the authority to the clerk of this municipality, then this council can consider it. But my suggestion would be deferral until that date comes. And so I would move, Mr. Mayor, that this recommendation be deferred until the relevant amendments are forwarded to this council by the Source Protection Authority. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And firstly, I will second that motion.
Okay.
My reservations with this policy are rooted in a little different fashion, but I agree with all of those that we just heard from the Deputy Mayor. My reservations with this are that, and I brought them to the attention of the MOECC when they were here a couple of weeks ago, and also at the open house they held afterwards. And those are that I have a problem with the way that the monies from the provincial government and now the municipal government are being allocated to protect the municipal drinking water sources. We have a policy in this town where people who use municipal water and sewage services pay for those services, and that those people who do not, i.e. people who are on wells and septic systems, it doesn't come out of the tax roll. It comes out of user fees. And the province has stated on many occasions that they believe in user fees for people who use services, and those that don't use those services shouldn't pay for them. And I have a problem with my municipal taxes or my provincial taxes, or for that matter, my federal taxes being used for a service that I don't personally use, and many of the people in the in the ward, Saugeen Township ward that I represent, do not use because we take our water from wells and we use a septic system, which I get no support from the municipality or from the provincial or federal government on maintaining either, other than at an installation point I get inspected. So I'd just like to state for the record that I am in disagreement with the MOECC using any of my provincial tax dollars to regulate a service that I have no access to. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go. Okay, Councillor Grace, and I think Deputy Mayor, and then go ahead, Vice Chair.
Thank you. I guess my question goes back to the Deputy Mayor's motion, and I do think this is a good policy, but I want to see fuel storage regulated and monitored. But my question is the timeline, because is this likely to be are we going to be spinning our wheels in an impasse here, a showdown, or is this going to be something that there's some kind of compromise that can be reached so that we can be, moving towards a resolution?
I think, I don't think it's going to change anything other than perhaps if there was a new proposal to come along for fuel storage. It doesn't change how the existing, there's a number of pieces of legislation, and I think we talked about that last time, that already apply to fuel storage, but the risk management officer would only be there for new installations or new threats that were proposed in the catchment area. And I guess if we get another application for another huge fuel storage, then we can deal with that. But I suspect that. Okay, I better.
If I could just clarify, I understand that. I'm just saying that I do think it's a good policy to say that we shouldn't be building a big gas station within that section that's close to our intake area in Southampton, and or some other place that within that zone. But my concern here is I'm asking the Deputy Mayor for his estimation of how this could be resolved. Thanks.
Oh, I'll get to go ahead, Luke. May I get that?
Just very briefly, it's a good question from the councillor, and I don't know the answer to that. This could have been resolved much more easily a number of weeks ago. We attempted that, but the ministries remain very stagnant in their position that they're doing nothing wrong, which I disagree with, obviously. But my hope is to resolve it and get the process happening. I don't want this. You know my views on the resolution, on the amendments, but I don't want to hold. My intention is not to hold them up on the basis of some procedural issue, but I just feel like this council, as well as Source Protection Authority, should stand on this process and say that it's necessary, that it's done right, because there's going to be more amendments to this plan. There's going to be more amendments come up on and on, and the local involvement is really critical. And so we should be clear with the ministry that we want to see it, whatever the amendments are proposed, whatever they are, that they be introduced in a way that the legislature envisioned, including this council as well as Source Protection Authorities. I think that's just critical, because where you start has a great deal of impact on where you end up. And so I can't tell you how long it's going to take, but I just feel like it's real critical, no matter how long it takes, for us to demand they do it right.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber. Okay, Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think Luke, Deputy Mayor, makes a compelling argument for deferral. And my hope would be that we've got that motion to go through. At the end of the day, for me, this is about large fuel storage areas, and if ever there was an argument to link towards drinking water and similar occurrences as Flint, what happened there, this would be it for me. And clearly for me, I'd like to see a list and the status of all of those threats in our community, past, present, and possible future by zone. Say where the zoning is. We can always look at the zoning map, but I think we should itemize these and say there are harbors, there are airports, there are commercial providers, of fuel, and there are abandoned gas stations, fuel stations in our community, and there are new ones. Surely we should be able to compose a list and say there are 20, there are 25, there are 30, whatever the number is, and this is the current status. They're in compliance with current legislation. We need to review them. I'm reminded of my time on Port Elgin Council some 25 years ago, and the Geddes Street property had love canal connections, if you want to say it that way, and there were requirements for sampling of the soil and requirements for proposed developers to make sure that land in that area was well looked after. And I would hope that we would extend this requirement in our community by having the list. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion then to defer this to some time in the future, I guess, until it's properly presented to us here from the Source Protection Authority, I guess. And we've had lots of discussion. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is again, a planning and development staff report, and it has to do with sidewalk patio and sidewalk cafe encroachment policy, and our manager of development services, Bart Toby, will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to the December 14th Committee of the Whole meeting, staff met with the Port Elgin BIA. After meeting with the BIA, staff revised the policy further to prohibit, within the Port Elgin BIA, decking for lands abutting Goddard Street. There is now a consensus from both BIAs that the revised sidewalk patio and sidewalk cafe encroachment policy can be supported. The revised policy is attached.
Difficulty here with the recommendation here. Okay. Some electronic difficulty. The recommendation is that Council considers adopting the sidewalk patio and sidewalk cafe encroachment policy. Questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
I have a question and then a comment. Through you to Bart, the comment about decking, would that preclude what Chester's did this past summer?
No, that would not. Chester's did was on their own property. So but this is talking about town property.
Okay, that's not what it says, though. It says lands abutting the highway. Is it because we have the little strip in between that theirs isn't? Okay. And my second comment really relates to item 8, which basically reads, and I'm looking at it, it says, all applications shall be required to submit a letter from the relevant Business Improvement Association stating that the BIA has no objections to the proposed patio or cafe. I understand what this is suggesting. I don't know why we're giving the BIAs this basically what sounds like veto power when, if I go back to a recent Planning Advisory Committee series of meetings about home industries and home occupations, we certainly don't give people in the neighborhood a chance to basically, we don't require that somebody have a letter from the relevant neighborhood stating that those people have no objections to that proposed business being located there. So I'm just curious to know why we would, and I understand what it's all about, and I don't necessarily completely disagree with the idea that, people in the neighborhood should be able to make a comment. This does sound to me, though, like if that letter is not there, that the application would not be approved. And I don't agree with that because we don't give that privilege to any other application for something to happen in a neighborhood anywhere else in the community. And I find this very, very difficult to support given what we're going through right now with home industries and home occupations through the Planning Advisory Committee and the disruption that's caused to certain neighborhoods in this community. And we don't let those people state their objections, and thus an application isn't possible. Thank you.
Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notwithstanding the obvious benefits from doing this and what it can do for the community, in particular downtown Port Elgin, where I sit on the BIA, I was actually at odds with the BIA, and I said to them there were deputations and delegations to council saying there's not enough parking spots in the downtown area, and these on the side streets will take parking spots away. So I said that I was going to bring forward my report. You recall that I was working on a report for the last year, and I hope to bring it in the next 8 weeks to council, suggesting where 5, 10, as many as 100 new parking spots can be created in the downtown core. So I asked the BIA and staff to consider an amendment that said for every parking space that is going to be approved to be removed, a new one would need to be created. And I hope that my report will lend itself to that. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Did you want to comment, Bart? Okay. Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the key thing with this is, that we kind of hung up on the sidewalk patios, which is a key feature. But the thing that's been held up for like almost 2 years now, because of all that, are the important other changes, like allowing heaters on sidewalk patios and allowing lights on sidewalk patios. These are simple things that that a heater on a sidewalk patio is allowed in just about every jurisdiction on earth except for here. And so, we should get this. We need to get this approved. We need to get these amendments approved, but in time for summer, so that these people these business owners can have a reasonable use of a patio with normal provisions. And those are important amendments, and we should get them passed. And I think we've also got a good working agreement on these sidewalk patios that I think we should try out. I think it'll probably work well. We certainly have the support of the BIAs, which is important, and I really just would like us to see this move this encroachment policy forward tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rich.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to address the Vice Deputy Mayor's comments because I think that they are important about giving other people an opportunity. And I think it relates back to what Councillor Minaj was saying, that there is a concern about losing parking spots in the downtown core, which is where these patios are going to go. There'll be a patio out and a walkway around, as far as I'm understanding.
The patios are not allowed on Goddard Street or Highway 21 anywhere, but on the side streets they may be allowed.
Yeah.
On the side streets, the option would be to take away a parking space and convert them. There's language in here, but that would only be under allowance from the BIA.
And that's kind of the point, I think, of giving other people an opportunity. So if they felt that there was a restriction to parking spaces, they would have an opportunity to speak. But I am in support of the motion because I think that it's going to be good for business in the downtown core.
Any further comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
I just want to repeat that why are we giving another body some kind of authority over municipal property? And am I reading this correctly, that if an application doesn't have a letter from the BIA saying that it's supportive, that application would fail? Is that what this is saying?
Yes, you're correct in that.
So would that business owner then have the ability to come to council to override?
Absolutely.
Because I wish some of you would have been out at planning meetings. This home occupation, home industry thing, we're not letting neighborhoods decide what goes into a neighborhood. We have other zoning things and other regulations in place, and I'm very, very hesitant. And I agree with the deputy mayor that some of these things have been in the works for a long time, and I agree with fundamentally the idea behind it. I think I'm going to vote against this because of item number 8, because the idea that an outside agency to council can say that something can happen on municipal property, and if they don't say that it can, then that application is null and void. That is usurping our role. Thank you.
Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What about would the Vice Deputy Mayor accept an amendment to 8 which adds the ability for the business owner to come to council to override the BIA's decision?
I think we can do that anyway, but I think that I think probably the easiest way to address that, and thanks for trying, Cheryl, would probably just be to take that last, that we circulate it to the BIA for their information, because we are the approval authority on all of these things, and not the BIA. So we circulate them for their information. You just take that last sentence out for the bylaw. If anybody's happy with that, if anybody wants to move that, that application shall be submitted to the relevant BIA for input or comment. Okay, thanks. Okay. He wants to change paragraph 8, and I should be putting words in your mouth, but this is what I'm suggesting. Instead, it reads, all applications shall be required to submit a letter from the relevant Business Improvement Association or we just want their input, because really, again, we will be the people that will be approving them, yes or no. And I think that's really clear. We're just maybe getting a little hung up here on this one sentence. And Councillor Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is that amendment acceptable to the Vice Deputy Mayor, or is there something else that she'd like to see?
Planning applications are circulated to relevant authorities, and that information is received and becomes part of the discussion. That's, I think, what the mayor is saying right here. I'm okay with that.
Is everybody clear on that amendment? Go ahead, Luke.
I want to be real clear about that, because this took us a long time to negotiate. It was a direct negotiation with BIAs, and this was a critical section to the agreement that BIAs have with this policy. If you remove the ability for the BIA to override these by objection, by their own objection, then you'll be undermining a piece that was negotiated to them as part of developing this policy, which will probably not be met with a great deal of cheering and happiness on the BIA. So I think we've got to be real careful retweaking this here, right in this moment, because we could end up with some angry delegations on that subject down the road. My own view is that we do. These are not just any outside agencies. These are municipal boards, and we do all the time. Municipal boards have powers that council doesn't have, or that council has delegated. Heritage committees have powers over designation and controlling what can and cannot be done on designated properties. Committees of adjustment have powers that we don't have, that we've delegated, that we haven't delegated, but exist under the acts, under provincial legislation. I mean, we do divest certain authorities. I don't think this is a real serious one for us to delegate, because what we've done by even establishing BIAs is establishing municipal agencies, municipal boards, with a direct interest in what happens in the downtowns. And I think that I think what we've done by doing that is given a certain amount of agency over those groups to determine how downtowns develop. So I think I don't have any difficulty with giving BIAs the authority to say yes or no to sidewalk patios, and I think that it's a pretty critical thing here, because that's part of how this all got structured. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the Vice Deputy Mayor about having a problem with this. I'm not saying that this is a factor right now, but theoretically, couldn't you have a situation where the applicant is not well liked or popular among the leadership of the BIA, and their application is not supported for some other kind of reason other than I just really am uncomfortable with that without any kind of override opportunity.
Well, again, I go back. Go ahead, Bart.
I think the applicant will always have the opportunity to bring his complaint to council, and council will have always the ability to override what has been done at a committee of theirs. And so this doesn't take away the opportunity for an applicant to make application, address the BIA and try to get something going. And if they fail at the BIA level, then they're always welcome to come and speak to council and put their case forward there.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
But why not have that in the policy then?
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
This is suggesting that business owners who have a pecuniary interest in a lot of different ways with downtown activity have a chance to say yay or nay to another business owner. That's not fair. And I understand the idea of BIA support, but this is enabling the BIA to tell somebody, nah, you can't do it, and that would be the stumbling block that then somebody would have to come before us. I don't have any problem with the idea of the BIA putting a comment into the mix for the process, but to enable business owners who have pecuniary interests potentially tell another business owner, no, we're not supportive of that. That to me is just, I don't get that. So if the amendment stays and implies that there's consultation and a comment and that kind of thing, that's okay. But other than that, I really think it's wrong that it appears as though there's a veto power there that doesn't make any sense.
I think we've had plenty of discussion on this particular issue. No, I'm going to go back to Councillor Rich, and if you were willing to let that motion stand, that amending motion that we asked for. Okay.
I'd be willing to let it stand. In the end, it's just about creating a compromise that hopefully that everyone can.
Yeah, I don't think this is likely to ever be an issue. Very, very rarely that it would be an issue, I don't think. Hopefully. Anyways, and it's been seconded by Councillor Gray. So the understanding is that we will change paragraph 8 to say instead of that the BIA has no objections, that we circulate for their information, I guess. That's the intent. Information and comment. Okay. I'm going to call the question on the amendment then. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That carries. So then go back to the main recommendation as amended. Do we need any more discussion on that? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. So the next item on the agenda is communication petitions for the Committee of the Whole action. We have a letter from AMO, LAS, and it's a request, something that AMO have been working for a number of years, and it's a sample motion there about requesting broader investment powers for municipality. And I will take direction from committee. Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Move to support, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Grace.
I have a question for Sue, if I may.
Yep.
Sue, do you believe that we're at a disadvantage by not having the increased prudent investor status that the City of Toronto does?
I'm not sure how to answer that question. I mean, our investment policy states that our principal must be protected at all times. I suspect that we would not go this route, even if we were allowed to under whatever. Yeah, no.
Okay, so we have a mover to support. Anybody willing to second by Councillor Dave Mayette? Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. So we have a few things on committee communication petitions for committee for information. There's 17 items there. And any comments, Councillor Grace?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I've got a question about the number 2, the municipality of Brockton on the Gilmore versus Nottawasaga Valley case. And I guess this is, I'm assuming that the deputy mayor would know most about this. Is money from the SVCA being used to fund the appeal in the case?
Insofar as the, pardon me, Mr. Mayor, insofar as the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority is a member of Conservation Ontario, so Conservation Ontario is I'll blank on what they're calling themselves. It's they're seeking intervenor status as part of this legal proceeding. Conservation Ontario is, and Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority is a member of Conservation Ontario, but it's a decision that was taken at the Conservation Ontario level.
Then I did some reading on the case. Do you have any thoughts about that? Just from your experience?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Without getting into too many details about the case, I would say that overall it's a extremely critical and precedent-setting, has the potential to be precedent-setting in that in this case a decision by a conservation authority, actually a decision by the Ministry of pardon me, the tribunal, the Mining and Lands Tribunal, which is the appeal board for conservation authorities, was overturned by a court, and as a result of that, and there's a lot of details to this, but it has the potential to be to greatly alter the way conservation authorities can exercise their authorities in the province, and so that's why Conservation Ontario became an intervener, because it's if the ruling goes one way, it could be a vastly altering scenario, and not necessarily, and certainly in some people's view anyway, a bad thing. But I think certainly in the view of the municipality of Brockton, maybe not necessarily a bad thing. But it's one to watch anyway, because I think it could very much change the way conservation authorities do their business. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just as another point, there was another case. It was actually cited in that case was the Niagara Peninsula, I guess, was, and the issues were very similar, and they were quoted. So I mean, there's two cases here, and I'd be quite honest with you, Cheryl, I have a great deal of difficulty with Conservation Authority with it appealing this, and I think probably we should be dealing with that at the Conservation Authority, or we can, but that's enough. Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number 12, Canada's 150th Committee. Several of us on council have been attending those meetings, and clearly this is a generational party, and events to remember is what we're working with, and we have an opportunity to extend it beyond the sesquicentennial July 1st, 2017 date. Happens to fall across a weekend, which is absolutely grand and beautiful. We need help. We need people to come forward to say they can help, and we need people to come forward with new wow factor events that they think that the community should be doing. We've had great press coverage, and we're looking to continue the effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Item number 9 about the OMB jurisdiction. I would suggest that that's an item that wouldn't be such a bad idea for us to send a very similar message to the provincial government about OMB jurisdiction. I would move that we support item 9 and send our response to the provincial government and anybody else we can think of, that that whole list that they have there. I just don't have it up in front of me right now.
Okay, it's been seconded by Councillor Minaj. Any further discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Any further comments to those information items? If not, we have two reports there. One is Council Remuneration and Expenses. It's there for your information. The second is the a great event that will be coming to our community in 2017. It's the Life Saving Waterfront Provincial Championships, and they'll be taking place. The dates are in there. Sometime in August 12th to the 15th in Southampton and Port Elgin. So I look forward to it. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Councillor Madison and Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, all in favor? We'll take a 10-minute break and reconvene at 9:40. 5.